back to my channel. So for those who don't know me, hi, hello, I'm Joanna and I make true crime videos. I post videos every Saturday, and in today's video I'm going to talk about the Hinterkaifeck. I don't know if that's how I pronounce it, but anyways, I'm going to talk about the Hinterkaifeck murders that occurred in Germany. This is a German case and is one of the most famous mysteries in Germany's history. And this case is very interesting, so let's get started. The crimes occurred on the evening of March 31st on 1922, in which a family of 6 people of a small Bavarian farmstead, located approximately 43 miles north of Munich in Germany, were murdered by an unknown assailant. 6 victims were Andreas Gruber, who was 63 years old, his wife, Casilia Gruber, who was 72 years old, their daughter, Victoria Gabrielle, who was 35 years old, and her 2 children, Casilia Gabrielle, who was 7 years old, and her son Joseph Gabriel, who was 2 years old at the time, and the 6th victim was Maria, who was the maid of the family, and she was 44 years old. But now let's talk about what happened before the murders. Some strange things started to happen in the Hinterkaifeck a few months before the crimes. 6 months before the attack, the maid of the family quit, and the maid was not Maria, was the previous maid. And it was claimed that she quit her job because she believed that the house was haunted, because she was hearing some strange things, so she was convinced that the house was haunted. Then on March of 1922, Andreas found a strange newspaper from Munich in his property. He didn't remember buying that newspaper, so he thought that maybe the postman had lost it there. But a few days before the murders, Andreas told some neighbors that he found tracks on the fresh snow that led from the forest to a broken door lock in the farm's machine's room. But later, during the night, they heard some footsteps in the attic. So Andreas went to see if someone was there, but he found no one. But despite all of this, he refused to get any help. He was telling neighbors what was happening, what he was like seeing and hearing, but he refused to get any help, so he never went to the police to report this. Now let's talk about the day, March 31st of 1922, the day of the murders. So on the afternoon of that day was a Friday, and the new maid, Maria, and I'm not gonna even try to pronounce her last name because I have no idea how this is pronounced. I'm so sorry, I don't speak German, but let's just move on. So Maria was arrived at the farm in that afternoon of March 31st of 1922. Her sister was the one who took her there, but then left after a short stay. That Maria's sister was most likely the last person to see that family alive. It appears that Victoria, her parents, and her daughter were lured to the family barn through the stable on that night, where they were murdered one at a time. The predator or predators used a mattock belonging to the family farm and killed them with blunts to the head. And the killer or killers moved into the living quarters with the same murder weapon, and then they found Joseph sleeping in his bed and they murdered him too. And then they found Maria also sleeping in her bedchamber and they also murdered her. But the bodies were only found 4 days after the murders. There were some people that went to the Hinterkaifeck during the following days before the bodies were found, and they thought it was a little bit weird that they didn't see anyone, they didn't know where the family was. There was like no one in the farm, at least they could see. So I thought it was a little bit weird, but they didn't think too much of it. They didn't go to the police, they didn't report that they were like missing or anything. They basically just didn't think too much of it. They never thought that the family was murdered. So the bodies were only found 4 days after the murders. So Albert Hoffner went to the farm to repair the engine of the food shopper. He said that he didn't see any of the family members and he didn't hear anything. He only could hear the animals of the farm and the dog, but there were no signs of the family members or the maid, nothing. So after waiting for an hour, he decided to start to do his job and to repair that machine, which he completed in within like 4.5 hours. Then around 3:30 p.m., Lawrence, and I'm not even trying to say his last name, it's too long. I don't speak German, I have no idea how that is pronounced, but this man, it's believed that he had an affair with Victoria. So he sent his son Jonathan, who was 16 years old, and his stepson Joseph, who was 9 years old, to the farm to see if they could speak to the family, because no one heard from them from like 4 days now. No one knows what happened to them, so he sent them there. When they said to their father that they didn't see anyone, Lawrence decided to go to the farm himself, and he went with Michael Paul and to Jacob Sinkle, and they entered the barn and they found the bodies of Andreas, Casilia, Victoria, and her daughter Casilia. And shortly after, they found maid Maria, and then they found Joseph. Inspector George and his colleagues from the Munich Police Department were the ones who investigate the murders. The day after the discovery of the bodies, the court physician Johann Baptist did the autopsies on the bodies, and he found out that the murder weapon was most likely a mattock, even though the murder weapon itself wasn't at the crime scene. Evidence showed that the younger Casilia, Victoria's daughter, was alive for several hours after she was attacked, and the skulls of the victims were removed and sent to Munich to further examination. First, police thought that the motive of the killings was a robbery, but then when they were searching the house, they noticed that nothing was missing. The house didn't hide any signs that was robbed, so the motive couldn't be robbery. And it was clear that the predator or predators had stayed at the farm for several days, like after the murders and before the bodies were found. So they stayed there for like 2 or 3 days because the fridge was completely empty, so someone had to eat the food, and someone had fed the cattle, and someone had recently cut meat from the pantry. So someone was there, someone stayed there for several days. So police couldn't find the motive that may lead someone to murder a whole family, so they started to make a list of suspects. But let me tell, I'm only going to talk about like the main, like not the main suspects, but the most famous suspects, those suspects that people like believe that they may have done it, because this case had hundreds of suspects. You had a lot of suspects. So I'm going to only to talk about a few, but none of them was proven to be guilty, because as I said in the beginning, this crime is one of the most famous mysteries in the Germany's history. But let's start with the first suspect. The first suspect was Karl Gabriel, and I don't know if the last name is familiar to you. Victoria Gabriel, Karl Gabriel. So yes, Karl was Victoria's husband, but there's a little twist in here, because he had reportedly died in France by a shell attack in December of 1914 during the First World War. However, his body was never found, so there's not actually proof that he died, but he was in a war, so he never appeared again, so he's most likely dead. But still, he was considered a suspect, and I'm going to explain why. After the murders, people began to think if he actually died in war. And as I said earlier, Joseph, Victoria's son, was not Karl's son. People believe that Joseph was the son of Victoria and Andreas, which means that Victoria and Andreas had an incestuous relationship, and apparently everyone knew about it. After the Second World War, war captives from this region, I'm going to put the name right here because I have no idea how to pronounce it, and you guys know I suck at pronunciation, especially German, because I don't speak German. But anyways, the captives from this region were released from Soviet captivity, and they claimed that they had been sent home by a Soviet German-speaking officer who claimed to be the Hinterkaifeck murderer. And then people start to have this theory that maybe this man was Carl and he was one who murdered the family, and there were people that also said that he always wanted to go to Russia. So I don't know. I really don't believe in this theory because the man is dead. He died in war. If he never showed up again, I believe he died in war. And people love to do conspiracy theories. So I guess that's one of those. So the next suspect is Lawrence Sichitlettenbauer. This is how I pronounce. I'm so sorry. If you're German, please can you tell me how this is pronounced? Because I have no idea. I pronounced it wrong. That's right now. But anyways, let's move on. So shortly after his wife's death in 1918, people started to believe that he had a relationship with Victoria, and he even fathered Joseph because the initials LS appeared on Joseph's birth certificate, but people think that maybe it's his initials, but it could be from an attending doctor. They don't really know. And Lawrence started to look suspicious because first he was one who found the bodies. He was not alone, obviously, but still he was one who found the bodies. And because people say that they had suspicious actions by the time of the murders, and especially after the bodies were found. And when he went to the farm to look for the family after his son and stepson didn't see anyone, he and his friends, because he took two friends with him, Michael and Jacob, and they had to break a gate so they could get in because all of the doors were locked. But apparently, after they found the bodies, Lawrence opened a door to the house with a spare key that he had. And apparently, a key to the house had disappeared a few days before the murders. So this looks kind of suspicious, even though he kind of had a relationship with Victoria, so she could have given a spare key to him. But still, people thought this was suspicious. But when he opened that door, he entered the house alone, and people questioned why. Because the killer could still be there. Because, as I said, the killer stayed in the house for a few days, and they didn't know how long that family was there. They didn't know when they were killed. They could be killed just a few hours ago, and the killer might still be there. But so they thought it was kind of strange that he went to the house alone. When he got asked this, he said that he just went there alone because he wanted to see if his son Joseph was still alive, and unfortunately he wasn't. But for many years after the murders happened, people were still suspecting that Lawrence may have done something because of his strange comments, because sometimes he said things that only the killer would know. So people start to really believe that he was the one who did it, but at the same time, there was no evidence against him. Then we have Carl S. and Andreas S. In 1971, a woman named Teresa T. wrote a letter citing an event in her youth. She witnesses her mother receiving a visit from the brothers Carl and Andreas S. And that woman claimed that those two were the murders of Hinterkaifeck, because the mother said Andreas regretted that he lost his penknife in the course of a conversation. She said this. In 1923, the farm was demolished, and they found a penknife that they didn't know who it belonged to. The farmer maid then came forward and said that she thought that she already had seen the penknife in the house before. So this really never got anywhere. So let's go to the next suspect, that is Peter Weber. He was named a suspect by Joseph Betts, and the two worked together. They even shared a chamber. And according to Joseph, Peter had spoken to him about a farm in Hinterkaifeck. And Peter knew that only one old couple and their daughter and their grandchildren lived there. It is also likely that he knew about incest with Andreas and Victoria. And Joseph testified in a hearing that Peter had suggested to kill Andreas to get the family's money. But Joseph didn't respond to that offer. He didn't say anything, so Peter just stopped talking about it. So I don't know. Do you think it was him? Tell me in the comments, because I don't really know. If he wanted to kill Andrea to get family's money, he would have taken some money, and nothing was taken, so I don't believe he did it. And now let's get to the last suspect that I have, that is Paul Muller. And this wasn't like a suspect during the time of the investigations, but it was after a person wrote a book about these murders. So the author of the book is Bill James, and he wrote the book called The Man from the Train, that alleges that Paul Muller may have been responsible for the murders. So this crime in particular had similarities to another crime that this man committed in the United States, where he literally killed a whole family in their isolated home. And apparently he also hadn't stole anything from the house. So once again, the motive was not robbery. It was exactly what happened in the Hinterkaifeck case. Nothing was missing from the house. People were just murdered. So apparently this man was a German immigrant, and these authors suspect that he was responsible for the killings of this family, but the reality is there is no evidence of that. It's just theories. That's all for this video. I really don't know what to think. I don't know if I believe that any of these suspects that I talked about could be the person who murdered the family. Because the truth is, there is no evidence. There's literally nothing to work with. There's no evidence that some of these people could have done it. They're just theories. But I want you guys to tell me in the comments what you think about this case, and especially if you live in Germany, you probably know more about this case than I do. So I really like to hear your thoughts on this, so leave it in the comments. And if you're new to my channel, please subscribe. I really appreciate it. And if you share my channel with some friend or family member that also enjoys true crime videos, I really appreciate it. And if you want me to talk about a specific case, you can reach out to me in the comments or through my social media that will be linked down below in the description box, my Instagram and my Twitter. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like so I know that you guys enjoyed it. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on next time. Bye bye.